Feel extremely honored to be here tonight in representation of my father, Antonio Ledezma, and in representation of our brave political prisoners in Venezuela. Thank you, UN Watch. Thank you, Hillel. You have become the voice of hundreds of Venezuelans, including my father, that today feel completely silenced in our country. Last time when I had the opportunity to speak at the Geneva summit, I spoke on behalf of 77 political prisoners. Tonight, I'm speaking on behalf of 96. Sadly, this is a number that keeps increasing in my country because our legal system is used as a weapon to intimidate, to threaten, and to fear everyone who dares to speak against this tyranny that has been destroying my country for 18 years. I am 24 years old and I don't know anything different than this regime. Tonight I don't want to only speak about that politician you saw up there on that video. I want to also speak about a loving father, a loving husband, a loving friend, and about the bravest men I've ever known that I have the privilege to call father. I want to also share with you how my life, how my family's life, my sister who's with me here tonight, changed in a very abrupt way. A year and 3 months ago, 120 police armed men came to my father's office. They showed up, smashed into his office, without a warrant for his arrest, without giving any sort of explanations. Why were they taking him? What were the reasons of his arrest, of his kidnap? And for the longest 9 hours of my life, for the longest 9 hours of my family's life, we went through the psychological terror of not knowing if my father was alive, of not knowing what was happening and if he was being tortured. And it was until late hours of the night that the president, the dictator Nicolás Maduro, came up on national TV and said that my father was being charged for conspiring a coup against his government. Something that until today we don't have one proof that can, ally that this is truth or not. So he had his hearing a year after his arrest. Hearing that was supposed to happen 45 days after his arrest, it happened a year after. And in this hearing, the public prosecutor and the judge are trying to give my father 2 charges, conspiracy and criminal association. Both charges can land him up in jail for 26 years. I remember that day I felt desperate. Anyone who has a father can imagine the desperation of imagining my father ending up his life in jail. And I hugged him and I cried to him desperately, and I asked him if he was scared, what was our next move. So he hugged me back and he told me that the only fear he had was imagining to lose Venezuela to this dictatorship. So this is Antonio Ledezma, this is my father. He is today the only mayor of the world who was elected and re-elected for almost 100,000 voters, who is illegally arrested. He is the second civil authority of my country. And with this, I'm not trying to make him sound more or less important than our other political prisoners. With this, I want you all to imagine the vulnerability that we're feeling as Venezuelans. When something like this can happen to a mayor, imagine what can happen to the rest of us. Seeing my father in jail has been definitely the hardest and the most painful experience that I've been through in my life. But his strength, his courage has made me see this in a different perspective. Not everyone has the privilege that I have to have a father who gave up his freedom, so tomorrow I can have a free country. I want to conclude saying something that I've been asking to myself. Why a country like Venezuela is still part of the UN Human Rights Council. Why in a country where human rights mean nothing? Why when children are dying at hospitals every day due to the lack of medicines? Why when we are going through the worst political and social humanitarian crisis that we've ever been lived in our history? And why when stories like my father's stories are still happening? Thank you. Thank you. You and watch.